Welcome to the Proven Principles podcast by Knowing Hospitality, the show that deconstructs and demystifies the inner workings of the hotel industry. Here's your host, Adam Knight.
Thanks everyone for listening to the show. My guests today are Michael Harper and Andreas Palmqvist. They're the founders of Hotel Strategy Co., a hotel performance consulting company based in Australia. And our show today is about performance hacking or growth hacking. We're talking about the mindset and the strategies that you need to put in place to successfully lead your hotel through this pandemic and come out on the other end best set up to take advantage of the upswing when it eventually happens. This was a fun episode to do. There are a couple of really great guys. I hope you enjoy it. So let's just get right to it. Michael Harper, Andreas Palmqvist, Hotel Strategy Co. Enjoy. Okay, we're recording. Guys, Michael, Andreas, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Why don't we start off with a little bit about both of yours backstory? How'd you get to be where you are today?
Yeah, all right. Well, Andreas and I worked together many years ago for Ridges Hotels and Resorts here in Australia, and we had a pretty successful time then. We had lots of jokes and high-fiving and things going on at the time because we actually kicked some pretty big goals at the hotel we're working at. And we had a fabulous mentor there as well in Tish Nyer. And basically, many years later, Andreas remained heavily involved in the industry. I went off on more of a sales business development tangent, but we've joined back together, and we just felt that because we had such success back in the day, we thought we could I guess share that knowledge with a wider audience, and that's how we come together to form up Hotel Strategy Co. But maybe, Andreas, you want to touch on more about your background?
Yeah, I guess it was about 15 years ago that we worked together, Mick, and obviously there was a lot of water under the bridge between drinks, I guess, and we got back together with you, I guess, getting a business or a wider business experience, and I sort of stuck around inside the hotel world. And very quickly sort of found my love not in what I did way back when with Mick in operations, but more in sort of revenue management and the strategic side of businesses, and thoroughly enjoyed that, and I've worked and done that sort of the whole time. So it made perfect sense to get back together with Mick about 5 years ago. I'd been consulting by myself, and so had Mick for a good 4 or 5 years, and we could kind of utilize each other's strengths, and we have ever since, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, that's such a great story about even in the hotel business here, when people, you get exposed to so many different backgrounds and so many different skill sets, and people still come together and you build these great relationships, and you never know where it's going to take you. That's always one of the things about hotels that I've always loved. And
it's a huge industry, but you know, you're bound to come across each other sooner or later again.
They say,
like never burn any bridges. Yeah.
It's true. So we got connected, guys, through a post that you did on eHotelier that I think was really interesting about performance hacking. And in this time of all of, everything that's going on in the industry, which, we could make in fact, we have made other shows about, but you could make a whole other show about. But performance hacking, I love this idea, especially now, because there does seem to be so much going on. It can be hard for hotel managers to know, where to go and what to focus on. So, how did you come up with this? What's your what's your perspective, I guess, on the market with respect to performance hacking and where things are going?
Look, really, the performance hacking was an article we put out, a series of articles as we went into lockdown here in Australia in mid-March. We sort of got to work on, how can we help everyone out there keep moving forward. And it was very much about that, keep moving forward was the messages. And that particular article was, I think, about the fifth in a line of I guess, COVID recovery articles that we wrote, because the early stuff was all about, what do we do now? And it was about trying to turn the focus to the future. And we lent into that term of growth hacking, that entrepreneurial term, growth hacking. And ultimately, this is really what we do for clients, on any other given day without a pandemic going on in the world. So it's really about, being nimble, trying to work with what you got, and finding those levels of optimization that'll actually be purely focused on growth, finding that low-hanging fruit using that 80-20 approach. Mm-hmm. So that's very much, like I said, what we do all the time, but we thought it was really pertinent to start turning our attention back to those same principles, and striving for growth by, and that's where we introduced the term performance hacking. And it seemed to resonate quite well out there in the marketplace.
I think Mick's point about the fact that whilst it's very pertinent now with everything that's going on in the world, it wasn't really something new for us. Jumping in and helping out, and clients out there. Really, it's about that 80-20 rule and about getting ducks in a row, I guess. About really. Prioritizing and being clear in your head with the strategy of what's most important, what's going to have the biggest impact on your business straight away.
Mm-hmm. There's times were really good for so long that if you weren't succeeding when times were good, it can be even more difficult when times are bad. I mean, that's a very obvious statement, but we're seeing it across the board right now. And in good times, when it was easy to make money and you were filling your hotel, there's no doubt that there were some bad habits that were developed, or maybe moving away from some basics just because people had the ability to experiment a little bit more without the fear of failure, or failure wasn't going to be so bad. So when you're thinking about the performance hacking or growth hacking, in the context of what's going on right now, are there any principles that you feel like we moved away from that we need to get back to? Like what are some examples of that low-hanging fruit that you're advising some of your customers or some of your clients to go after?
I think first of all, the point you raised in your question in regards to trying things out is again, yes, the businesses are struggling and taking risks might have huge detriment to your business. However, if you don't try things out, or if you don't, if you don't try things out, test things, test the market, etc., you're not going to succeed. And I think the point, especially in flat markets, is that you might not have that much to lose if you try things out. And I think the most obvious one there, speaking as a true revenue manager, is test like the most obvious things in a pricing sense is if you're struggling and want to get more occupancy, you drop rate. That might not necessarily be the answer at all, and
right.
And we found that with plenty of our clients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's from back to that article is really what we pointed towards was there's some immediate things you need to take care of, and really everyone should be well past that now. There was all about your terms and conditions and becoming more flexible, adjusting your inventory, trying to cut costs, all that sort of stuff. And we're well past that. Like we're now 5 months in, as is most of the world. Then we started talking about what are those, medium-term maneuvers, and that's what Andreas is referring to there now. Is what sorts of things can we try that we haven't tried before? And we're seeing this with clients that they're actually taking on campaigns that they would never consider in a normal environment. It really gets back to that more open-minded thinking, and as Andreas had, reference to that, what are we actually risking here by trying it? And often it's not much at all. You just got to give some things a go and try and find those new markets that you haven't considered before. So it's just basically changing your thinking altogether. Yeah. But then we start to encourage people to start to think more long term. So while you're doing that, while you're doing the market maneuvers, and there's only so much you can do, there's only so much demand there. You just got to try and make sure you're getting your fair share. And then let's get prepared for what's it going to look like in the future. And those who are prepared the most for the future, we think will perform the best as the recovery comes. And yes, it will be long and it will be protracted, but it's always about trying to get your fair share of the market because of the work you've done prior to. It's not that react on the day by dropping your price and trying to capture it then. You've got to do your homework. Mm-hmm. And the evidence of that is, any of our clients that have been with us for some time that have moved through, I guess, our program and a lot of our philosophies, they're the ones that have performed well compared to the market because of the work they've done in the last 12 or 18 months, not because of what they're doing right now necessarily.
Yeah.
So we just need to have that eye on the future.
No, I like that. I mean, there's a quote in the article which I think sums that up so perfectly: is that when fishermen can't fish, they repair their nets. It's such a, it's such a beautifully said quote, beautifully placed quote. Because there is no silver bullet, is there? You really need to have the systems, the training, the expertise in place to be able to be successful when times are tough. You got to plan.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's we tend to use that terminology a lot. We wish there was a silver bullet, but there isn't. And or alternatively, you can look at it this way and say, well, the silver bullet is made up of lots and lots of individual pieces that make get you into a big silver bullet. And
right.
There's lots of things to do to I guess have that effect of a silver bullet effect.
Yeah.
Very true.
So what are you guys seeing out there in Australia? What's your perspective on how things are going? I mean, there's been some recent news about new outbreaks down there. I mean, here in the US, you just have to watch the news to see what's going on here. How has recovery been going there?
Recovery, if you ask me or ask us a month ago, we'd say it's going pretty well. As you would know, everyone knows that when something like this happens, and not that we've ever experienced anything like this before, but it's a sharp downturn nearly overnight. A recovery is always going to take a long time, and certainly not many of our clients or any of the markets were back to levels pre-pandemic, but they were heading in the right direction, and some of them still are. There are pockets here in Australia that are actually seeing year-on-year growth.
Oh wow!
Believe it or not, they're sort of in locations that I guess fit into that sort of perfect storm scenario where they're close enough to a major source market, and can sort of shift. I guess, or demand can shift from a corporate sort of demand to more of a leisure-based, which is really where the appetite is. There's huge appetite for people to get out of the house or get away from where they were after they were quarantined. So there's a huge demand for people to get out and go and stay somewhere and go and do something. What's, I guess, stopping that is a number of border closures that we have between states. So that's sort of what's possibly halted that sort of recovery in some of the markets here in Australia, where they are relying quite heavily. So our second largest city of Melbourne is in lockdown at the moment. They're about 4 weeks into that, and that's certainly impacting Sydney, for example.
Right. So taking a few steps back, definitely.
Yeah. I think to add to that, like Andreas is talking about some of the physical barriers that are limiting travel around border closures and the likes, but I think there's also a second layer to that around consumer confidence. So when the pandemic first hit, obviously none of us knew what was going on. We didn't know how bad this would be, and as the numbers exploded around the world, obviously there was a fear factor there. And as Australia, we managed it quite well, giving ourselves a pat on the back early on and kept our numbers down, or we got them down and they stayed down for a period. And that confidence came back into the consumer where you go, oh, you know what, that maybe this pandemic isn't so bad, or at least it's not so bad for us. Our country's got it under control. So people started to move, and that's the feeling we had only a month ago. And certainly leisure travel was moving, commercial a little bit slower. The business travel was a little bit slower and will continue to lag due to policy, I guess. But we became a little bit complacent, and I guess that's where the second wave has come from. And through that, the complacency, but it's the confidence that drove that demand, and it's what will drive it into the future. So I guess, what I'm saying is we need to keep an eye on what's the consumer sentiment out there and what's the business sentiment as to, is there something to fear out there, or should we just try to get back to normal? Whatever the fear is whooped up in the media, or borders are being closed, that impacts that confidence. And it's that confidence that impacts the booker's decision or motivations to book travel. And that's the thing I think we should be keeping our eye on, less so on the politicians, and really keep your finger on the pulse in that regard, if that makes sense for everyone.
No, it does. That makes perfect sense. I mean, that's a really good point. And as we get into budget season for 2021, every hotel is now trying to figure out, what's next year going to look like. And, if anybody can, write a book, you'll sell a boatload of them. But, how are you working with clients right now with respect to everything that you're saying that's going on in the market there, trying to get a little bit of clarity into 21, or at least maybe into the first quarter of 21 when you're putting a budget together, understanding consumer sentiment, understanding there's still a lot of uncertainty and a lot of conflicting government message out there. How are you working with clients? What are you advising them to do as they look at the new year? It's a clumsy question that isn't coming out very well, but I think you get the point.
Yeah, no, you know where you're getting from. I think that what we tend to look at, I guess, is very short-term trends. Don't look too far ahead. A budget's a budget, right? It's great to have, but it's not reality. Budget's there to be reforecasted daily anyway. So yes, that's obviously important, and certainly important for business owners and teams to work towards. But I think in the end of the day, current month, next month is really where it's at, and again, you can only look at what's going on in the country. Things are heading in this direction today, and then it'll head to completely different direction the next day because of a policy or because of a message that's been out there. What we are encouraging clients to do, going back to the growth hacking article again, I guess, is just to completely have an open mind and always look for those different opportunities that they may not even have considered in the past, to top things up and make sure that they get the bumps in beds whenever they can.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, even just your point about reforecasting daily is, right now, 100% you should be doing that. I mean, there's so many best practices from a revenue management perspective that may have fallen off the radar over the years. And reforecasting is one of those things that a lot of companies don't put the emphasis that they should on the process. The budget's the budget, and for some reason you want to stick to a number that you decided was the right one in August of last year, and it's now October the previous or the following year. Who knows? In good times, you never know.
And look, budget, traditionally has been the barometer. Let's look at what we did previously. Let's set a new budget and chase that. And then, all things being equal, let's chase that growth. But that barometer is completely out the window now, and it's now more than ever. It's a market share game, and you just got to really take a micro analytical approach to what's happening in the market, and just make sure that's the only true barometer you got at the moment to say, well, to say you're down year on year is obviously saying the obvious is out the window, but to be going, we got our fair share, or we got more than our fair share, is your only daily barometer that you can lean into at the moment and for the foreseeable future. So it's, we're just talking to all our clients. It's a market share game now, because that's the only thing that's going to tell you what you do, whether what you're doing is working or not. Right.
Yeah. So it's still STAR before the STAR report, before just about anything else.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's the most relevant benchmarking to be done. I agree.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, growth hacking, performance hacking, we all know all the different programs and rating agencies and every little thing that we like to put in our way in a hotel to make us think that we're doing a good job. Whether it's you name the program, you get 5 stars, you get a great rating, whatever it is. But yeah, market share at the end of the day, you want to know how well you're doing against the guy across the street. And it matters how many people are coming into your destination and how many of those people you're getting.
Yeah, I guess the only thing to add to that, I guess, is what we tend to focus on is the RevPAR market share, not necessarily just getting an extra person into the hotel, but actually making the people that come into the hotel profitable for the hotel.
Yeah.
And looking at that RevPAR line.
Yeah. When you're working with clients to that point, what are you doing to help them understand what's a profitable guest and what is a piece of business that you just shouldn't go after? I might be divulging trade secrets here, maybe at a high level.
It's a good question, and I guess to that individual level, it's very hard to say a week out or even on the day if they're going to be profitable or not. But it's still, I guess the point is, it's still about yielding. It's still about getting that extra dollar out of the client, or out of the guest as much as you can, and making sure that you get their whole wallet. Make sure that they dine in your restaurant. Make sure that they use your meeting rooms if they're still traveling in business, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Are there any resources out there that you're finding are constrained in hotels? Is there anything that's been pulled away as a reaction to what's happening right now that we need to find a way to either get it back in, or maybe there's another avenue that hotels can go after to try to get that resource back? That maybe it was an employee or a position that had to be let go, but you still need that expertise. What are you seeing?
So I think a little bit more holistic when you talk about what resources are in short supply. It's really human resources in themselves are in short supply, because the operational load that's come across GMs and all staff, for that fact, it's basically doubled to do half the job they used to do. So human resources, full stop, are just completely under the pump. And so I think the reflex to that is to then try and cut costs somewhere else, to find efficiencies, to trim the fat more and more and more. And then what tends to happen is, when we want to try and find new efficiencies, we then start to look to technology, which I think is a smart transition. That's great. But there's a couple of things within this. The first point I want to make is that if everyone's under the pump at the moment, and specifically short on human resources. So the reflex is to try and save money, cut costs, find efficiencies. I just want to say that you can only cut costs so far. You can't you can't save your way to profit. At some point, you've got to find some growth. At some point, you've got to get the revenue in the door to get the profit back to where you want it to be. So yes, do what you've got to do from a cost cutting point of view and efficiencies point of view, but don't stay there forever. And the other trick is, when GMs, being so busy, they then start to drop the ball on performance, because they're so damned in the operation and tied to it, trying to cope in this new world, that they're dropping the ball on watching the numbers, the performance, the star numbers, market share, all that sort of stuff, and being focused back on the fundamentals of what you're going to do. So if they then look towards technology to try and find that new, shiny object, that new silver bullet, to try and flick that switch, it's not going to be happening. But my advice would be, and this is, I guess, what underpins our whole philosophy, is that don't let technology lead your strategy. Create the strategy first, and then find the technology that's going to suit the strategy you're trying to implement. So yes, look towards technology to find some of those efficiencies and find some new revenue growth, but have the strategy in mind first before you go to market.
Yeah. No, I like that. And, it's reasonable to say that as we move through this and we kind of get into, several years from now, there's no doubt technology is going to play a huge role in how hotels operate, from everything. You're going to see most likely, more proliferation, from a revenue management perspective, bookings, making that process probably more efficient and easier to manage, a little more hands-off potentially. But even, you're seeing now stories about room service robots and housekeeping robots. I mean, it's not, you go to a grocery store here and you've got these self-checkout things that are everywhere now. They're ubiquitous. It's probably pretty reasonable to think that there's going to be check-in kiosks. That's going to become kind of the norm as we go through probably the next 3, 4, 5 years. With that, maybe I'm leading the witness a little bit, but how do you see hotels changing?
Andreas, we spoke a bit about this a number of times, didn't we? How certainly business travel will be changing.
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, we can only philosophize, I guess, this far out. But for the last 4 or 5 months, I guess, certainly here in Australia, and I think it's very similar around the world. Obviously, people have been encouraged to work from home. Companies have probably saved a fair amount of rent by people working from home. So I guess the question is, what's going to happen into the future? I mean, there's a few positives coming out of I guess, the change that has had to be implemented. Not only, I guess, cost savings from that perspective, but certainly the people from a commuting sense have to commute less. There's less congestion on the roads, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there'll be companies out there in the future that see benefits out of this, out of I guess the way that they have had to operate, they've been forced to operate going forward. So it's probably not impossible that there'll be companies out there that will encourage their staff to work from home, or at least periodically work from home. And I guess, tying that back into our industry, you would therefore think that the need to actually get together as a team away from the office might increase. There might be more demand for those conferences, more regular conferences, more travel into, to meet up elsewhere, and therefore a higher demand from a business sense for accommodation, short-term accommodation. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's a great hope of mine, but I think it certainly does make sense that it could develop into something like that. I guess the risk there is that as offices in the city stay empty, they too need to try and work out a way to fill those offices. So that's what we need to watch out for.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. There's no doubt in my mind that somebody's working on an app right now that's just going to revolutionize what we're doing. So, if you're working on that app, reach out to both of us, because I'm sure we would be interested to hear what you got cooking up. Hey, guys, before we wrap the show here, from a growth hacking or performance hacking perspective, is there something that listeners could do right now, or an area that they should put their attention to, that is going to get them started off on the right foot, that get them going in the right direction? What should they be putting attention to right now?
My recommendation would be twofold. First of all, going back to basics around everything to do with how your business is seen in the public light. Go back and reviewing all that sort of stuff. We call it a hotel health check or a gap analysis, but you're reviewing anything from your digital footprint, your online visibility, through to more of the internal workings and your front desk teams and all that sort of stuff. So run an audit over your company, and from that audit, identify some actions that you can take.
And I think the key, sorry to jump in, but the key to that, I guess, is to run it as a consumer. So don't do it as, this is what I always do, so therefore I know exactly what it looks like. I don't need to follow that through. Actually, audit it as a consumer and critique it as a consumer. Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I'd probably focus on is, because that first part, that'll help you be ready for the upswing, right? You'll maximize the market share, having done, use this time to do that work now. The other thing is much more future focused and talking about, room service robots and, some of this pie in the sky stuff. We'd all like to be on that next big thing. We'd all like to be the one that develops that app you're talking about. And I don't think nobody's necessarily got that answer right here, right now. But those answers come out of, strategic meetings with your teams, getting multiple heads together. It's not that one person's just going to sit there and go light bulb. It's actually getting people in a room and taking yourselves through a process of what does the future look like. And a video we recorded probably 4 or 5 years ago, it was actually was one of our COVID things we reinvented as well. So future-proof your hotel was the concept. And the idea sort of 5 years ago was that at some point in the future, we felt that the technology playing field will level out. 5 years ago, there was quite an indifference of people using technology, not using technology, and integrations and RM systems and all sorts of stuff. But at some point, that's going to level. And the thought process was, well, okay, when technology levels out, what's going to stand you apart? So it forced this thinking around thinking outside of technology to what's going to set you apart when everyone else has got equal technology, rather than using technology as your point of difference, so to speak. Now, what that looks like right here, right now, not sure, but you need to get your team together in a room and actually think about that and say, well, put COVID to the side. Let's have a think about what does the hotel industry look like in the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. What can we dream it might be? And by dreaming that and writing it down and putting it up on a whiteboard, from that, ideas can spark. And some of them might be pie in the sky, but some might be worth chasing after. And the point is, if you can dream it now and think about it, you can actually start to put plans in place and bend your organisation to that path and be right on the front foot if and when it comes to fruition. So that would be that second activity I would really encourage you to get your teams together and just bury yourselves away for a number of hours, socially distanced, of course, and have a thrash out of what the future looks like.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice and probably a great high note with everything that's going on to end the show. It's great advice. Cool. Thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate your time today, Michael and Andreas. If everybody wants to get a hold of you, learn more about what you're doing, where should they go?
Yeah, certainly. Just head to our website. It's the cornerstone of everything that we do there. So hotelstrategy.com.au, and you can find all sorts of resources on there and learn all about us.
Perfect. Good stuff. Guys, appreciate it again. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks, Adam.
Great. Thanks, Adam.
If you want to learn more about Michael or Andreas, you can find them at their website, hotelstrategy.com.au. We'll link to it in the show notes. And as for those show notes, our past episodes and other resources, you can find everything about us at knowinghospitality.com. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Proven Principles Podcast with Adam Knight. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. The podcast is brought to you by Knowing Hospitality, a full-service hotel management company that puts your performance first by rethinking the management model. Visit knowinghospitality.com to learn more. Until next time.